10 chicken, 9 chicken, for the Micronesian islands of the chicken. 10 chicken, 9 chicken, for the Micronesian islands of the chicken. Whoa, oh, oh, oh. All my people say, oh, oh, oh. All my people say,
I represent the 4 stars in my blood. I put my fist in the air with my index finger up. Yeah, we all one people when I represent them all. From water to measure, they all show me love. Stay connected to the islands like Tetris when we dropping. Riding from micro, shocking how we styling when that FGM drop. Turn up the volume cause we got that cut fresher than your woman's perfume. Goonie in the booth, baby. Sipping goose daily. All for one purpose, y'all know what I'm representing. I'm a bit far from home, but no matter what the distance, toast a cup with my bros, cause we all on one mission. It's the MICRO, Nesian. Haters, lay down slow, we don't need them now. Raise up like you trying to reach the ceiling. Unity is what we searching for. You with it, homie, sing along.
10 chicken, 9 chicken, for the Micronesian islands of the chicken. 10 chicken, 9 chicken, for the Micronesian islands of the chicken. Whoa, oh, oh, oh. All my people say, oh, oh, oh. All my people say, reppin' Model Island, what I'm here for. But still got love for my micros. And now they want it, they know who to look for. FGM to put it on the right flow. You know I'm about it, you know I'm real. Showing love to my people, that's real. It's the MICRO Legion, MICRO Legion. Haters, watch out, fall, believe it. I know you feel it, you know we in the building. You know I stay reppin', yes I stay reppin'. One time for my RMI people reppin'. 10 chicken, 9 chicken, for the Micronesian islands of the chicken. 10 chicken, 9 chicken, for the Micronesian islands of the chicken. Whoa, oh, oh, oh. All my people say, oh, oh, oh. All my people say.
Moi đến là một quên mê đi đây, lại đi người bốn tiếng mà sợ là cái gì, ngồi nhà ra mặt là cặp tay, tao ra the vice để được phong ngay đi, về mê mà là bốn tiếng mà chỉ đang ngồi đi để mà cái gì để ra cái mồi, về đi bao có mong ngọt thì không nghe đi, để mà moi để sẽ phá lỡ đó, để về chỉ là để một đi con, để về chỉ là để một without this tomorrow you go away, baby lie alone mungani. Without this tomorrow you go away, baby lie alone mungani. Hold on, we're hung looking down on you. On not a ride, not okay, can you stay with me? What they down, when I look for real, go check for real, and make love for real. You drop me from your mind, I drop you from my mind. I'm gonna baby, let's go back to our normal life. Me have a real woman in my heart, in my mind, in my life. All the time, look at me, baby. On me, no one person, on this earth living. Or people that people here, and the people everywhere. Me have a real woman in my heart, in my mind, in my life. All the time, look at me, baby. On me, no one person, on this earth living. Or people that people here, and the people everywhere. One time. Remix. Lean with it, rock with it, lean with it, rock with it, lean with it, rock with it. Hey girl, I'm a sapini kuga ayam mabut makamasaki kampi kere mama duwe tini ngogo mari gugu saga nuguta maara mega gini kawagagay napaam ngane yuluwe gulani ninge ayal madaba kumisapa ko dinto mun wana somewhere hung looking down on you. Oh, not alright, not okay, can you stay with me? Well, what did I want, what I will do? For we go check for we and make love for we yet we drop me from your mind, I drop you from my mind. Come on, baby, let's go back to our normal life. Me have a real woman in my home, in my mind, in my life all the time. Just look at me, baby. Only no one person on this earth living. Oh, people there, people here, many people everywhere. Me have a real woman in my home, in my mind, in my life all the time. Just look at me, baby.
Give us on the mic again. Singing the original song. I'm gone. So let me tell you about this girl, yeah, she's so fine. And every single day she's running through my mind. And I just wanna call her mine. Because your smile makes my day. And you take my pain away. Oh, my darling, love me back, 'cause I'm gone, no more trying. I'm gone, I'm waiting for you, 'cause I'm gone, no more lying. I'm gone, I'm searching for you. Baby, won't you come over to my place? To my place. I wanna feel your embrace. Your embrace. So baby, tell me now. Tell me now. I wanna love you some way and somehow, because your smile makes my day, and you take my pain away. Oh, my darling, love me back, 'cause I'm gone, no more trying. I'm gone, I'm waiting for you, 'cause I'm gone, no more lying. I'm gone, I'm searching for you. I've got you in my heart, in my heart. There won't be anything to tear us apart, tear us apart. So baby, tell me now. Tell me now. I wanna love you some way or somehow, because your smile makes my day.
Ano ai e nā kupa o nā kai e walu o ka moana nui a Kanaloa. Mai nā ale hā nupa nupa o ale nui hā hā. Mai nā hale hale poʻi pū o nā ale o alala keiki. Mai nā ale kualoloa i ke ala i ka hiki. Mai ke kai kā waha waha o au au. Mai nā ale kuehu o pailolo. Mai nā hua ale o ka iwi. Mai nā kai holo holo o ka ie ie waho. A i ke kai hā nupa nupa o ka ulakahi aloha. He o lino lino aloha ke ia ia o kou e nā kupa aina o nā kai e walu o kou Hawaii pai aina. He aloha no hoi ke ia e pāhola e ana i ka aina o nā ōiwi Amelika i kapa ia ma kona inoa hoʻoheno o Turtle Island. Mai nā mokupuni o ke ia pai aina, a hiki loa aku yo o kou lā i nā ōiwi. Ano ai me ke aloha. Aloha mai kako. Today, we begin our episode by acknowledging the oceans, the lands, the waterways, and the natural environment that our ancestors inhabited and cared for as stewards of these precious resources. We recognize the history of these unceded lands and territories that we now reside upon. Hawaii is an indigenous space where the descendants of the original people are today identified as Kanaka Maoli. We recognize that it was through coercion, force, and the breaking of formal treaties that this land was illegally seized. Her Majesty Queen Liliuokalani temporarily yielded the Hawaiian Kingdom and these territories under her duress and protest to the United States to avoid the bloodshed of her people. For many of us Kanaka Maoli, these moments of history continue to ignite our every move as we strive for sovereignty over our lands, our culture, our language, our knowledge systems, our rituals and religious ceremonies, our artistic practices, and ourselves. Today, I acknowledge, give gratitude, and honor Ke'ia'aina, this land, Nakai, the oceans, Kawai, the waters, Ko'umaukupuna, my ancestors, and the historical relationship that we as indigenous peoples have with this Aina, this place, Kapai Aina o Hawaii. Mahalo.
The Consortium of Asian American Theaters and Artists Confest virtual series, Return to the Source. This is our 6th episode called Where We're At, COVID-19 and Community, where we're going to talk about COVID, protest, insurrection, and the state of where we and the rest of the country are. I'm your host for today, KT Schwarb, producing artistic director of the Generic Ensemble Company and vice president of CAATA. First, we will begin with an update from our Confest steering committee.
Aloha, Kako. My name is Leilani Chan. I am co-chair of the National Asian American Theater Conference and Festival, lovingly called Confest, along with my co-chair, Kylie Opua Baker, and Kaha'i Olelo, who is our local coordinator. And we have a few updates from you. Aloha.
Aloha.
We have a couple updates for you. As you know, we originally had planned Confest to be in Hawaii last year, but we, of course, postponed it to 2021. And as many of you may not be surprised, we do not feel that it is prudent or safe for us to continue with planning for Confest to be in 2021. So we've been working really hard behind the scenes to make the decision to postpone. And as you can see, we will be doing Confest in May of 2022. I'm going to hand it over to Hailey to give us a few updates on our host institution, which would be the University of Hawaii at Manoa.
Mahalo anui e Leilani. So as you can see, we are looking at another year out. Currently, the University of Hawaii system is online. Most of our teaching will be online, and so will, for us at Kennedy Theater, our performances and productions have pivoted to a digital format. So we are continuing with the endeavors we started last semester in creating experiences for students and our community via online platforms. Um, most of us had anticipated this being the case this semester. Our campus is quite bare right now. Not too many students are on that campus because of the online classes. And all in all, it's the responsible thing for us to do to postpone a large gathering of this kind. And so we look forward to the next year and 4 months maybe of planning, continuing our plans and picking up where we left off so we can join together once again with our fellow artists, fellow scholars, and welcome everyone here to Hawaii. I want to share a little bit about where we are as far as the pandemic is concerned. And I'm going to ask Kahai Olelo if he can share a little bit about Hawaii and our reasons for postponement.
Of course. I think the narrative about Hawaii and the pandemic is that we're doing fairly well compared to other parts of the country. So I don't want to bog down the conversation with a lot of numbers. But the reality is the that narrative of Hawaii doing well is really in service of tourism, and and we'll go into that conversation a little bit more in a bit. But even without that dynamic, travel is happening to Hawaii right now. We're experiencing numbers of daily arrival numbers of approximately 10,000 arrivals per day. And yes, there's meant to be safeguards in place to make sure that people are tested. That system has shown failures, and it's very hard for our community on these islands in the middle of the Pacific. There's been so much. So much has changed and continues to change. The vaccines have been cause for this new wave of optimism. But the reality again is it is a slow rollout. It's going to be at least the summer of 2021 before most of us on this call will get the opportunity to receive the vaccine. And that's not even mentioning the high level of resistance among our community members who just don't want to or don't trust the vaccine. So with all of that, in just in consideration of your safety as folks that might be interested in coming to Hawaii for Confest, but more so for the safety of our people here in Hawaii, who are the most impacted communities, being the most recently arrived immigrant communities, the Pacific Island peoples. That's also seen within the Filipino community, living in multi-generational homes, and having members of those homes going out into the community because they need to earn the money to support their families. But those industries being in yeah and those industries being primarily the retail industry and the tourism industry, where it's again, hoping to welcome you here to Hawaii and have the important conversations and really highlight the work that's being done by all of you and by us here in Hawaii. We so desperately want to do that, and it feels like so necessary at these very challenging times. But it's just not right for us. You know, we just the idea that having you come here is, it just feels a little too close to the tourism that's really dominating the conversation here in Hawaii. So, although we want to make sure that Confest isn't a typical tourist experience, right? Uh, it's still it's just not right, and I don't think this should come as surprising to anyone. If you've tuned in, yeah. Um, but so we ask for your continued patience, and just know that we are continuing to work to make Confest so like just such an exciting and vibrant representation of our communities.
Mahalo e kaha'i. Yeah, and we'll get to touch a little bit more about this and talk about how our local community has been impacted by COVID-19, and the fact that local people, the po'e of this land, are really upset at the orders to stay home while we see the tourists frolicking on the beach, right? So, and coming and going as they wish, and us continually getting the blame and having to be the ones that make sacrifices. So we do not want Confest to be associated with those practices. And yeah, so we'll have a little bit more time, I think, later on in the show to have that conversation. But at this time, I would like to bring on our CAATA board president, Leslie Ishii.
Mahalo.
Oh, mahalo, Hailey. And mahalo for that, what we consider here at the Consortium of Asian American Theaters and Artists, an essential practice. Thank you for that beautiful, that powerful land acknowledgement. Thank you to you and your co-chair, Leilani Chan, and Kahai, for all three of you, for your leadership in running the steering committee and guiding our board toward this essential and really thoughtful planning so that we can all enjoy Confest in the near future. So thank you for your leadership. So with that, mahalo also. It's an honor to serve as the board president of CAATA. We are so grateful that you are all tuning in with us today. And I want to express my gratitude for your membership, and your donations are so deeply appreciated as they support programming like this important series where we bring you the current work and updates regarding issues of our Pan-Asian, Pacific Islander, Native, Indigenous, MENA, and bi and multiracial artistic communities. The updates such as the BIPOC practitioner and BITALK, meaning Black, Indigenous, and Theaters of Color COVID-19 Impact Survey, is one of the ways that CAATA is working in coalition with other BIPOC leaders and networks to garner our own data by and for us, designed in partnership with UCLA, so that we can tell our own story and how this pandemic, as you all just expressed, continues to disproportionately impact our communities. So this spring, we will bring you updates and phase 2 of this vital project. Another update, I have also represented us on a national committee that worked to make sure nonprofit theaters, specifically myself advocating for BIPOC theaters, the small and mid-sized theaters and arts and culture organizations, to be included in this current federal relief package and relief packages and stimulus packages going forward. So please do stay tuned with us at our website, our Facebook page as well, because we will be bringing you information sessions regarding eligibility and your ability to submit for this funding. So again, as you watch today, please, and engage in our programming, please continue to share out, continue to view, and make tax-deductible donations. And as I mentioned, go to our website, www.caata.net, to become a member
so that you can stay connected, break isolation, especially in these times of this pandemic, as we work on a national and local level to bring you these updates and the work that is in service of you all as our members, our greater community, our artists, because we serve you. We work on your behalf, and we can't do it without you. So thank you again for tuning in today. Mahalo. And at this point, I will pass it back to our wonderful and brilliant host, KT.
Thank you. To give a little background information and context for our conversation today, I'm going to give a short overview of racialization of Asian Americans and disease over the last 150 or so years. So, ever since people of Asian descent came to the United States, we have continuously been associated with infection and invasion. First coming to the fore in the form of anti-Asian sentiment against Chinese enclaves, Asian people began to symbolize degeneracy and squalor through depictions of opium addiction. Chinese immigrants became associated with smallpox, plague, and STIs. Angel Island, the port of entry for all Asian immigrants at the time, became a major health checkpoint. This idea of Chinese and other bodies as contagions led to the Chinese Exclusion Act, as well as numerous other exclusionary laws and practices aimed at immigrants from Asia. This general anxiety about infection and invasion from Asia was personified in the Yellow Peril, an insatiable, feckless caricature symbol of the Orient, hell-bent on taking over decent American soil with its inscrutable and calculating ways. The Yellow Peril has been equally concomitant with its counterpart, the model minority myth. In terms of health, this has led to a dichotomy of contagion versus imported, often colonial, care from much of Asia. Whether as diseased opium addicts wanting to colonize California, or as Filipino Florence Nightingales, Asian Americans have often been seen in close proximity to health. Our association with disease periodically returns. Swine flu, bird flu, and SARS are just some recent examples where disease too readily becomes associated with Asianness. The most recent, of course, being COVID-19. Touted as the Chinese virus by our own seditious president, and this image is a real image that Chinese is in Trump's own handwriting. Rather than taking steps to limit the spread of a much anticipated pandemic, white supremacists have taken aim at people of Asian descent as scapegoats. 1 in 4 Asian American youth have experienced anti-Asian bullying since March 2020. Over 2,500 incidents of anti-Asian hate were recorded between March and May alone, with some estimating anti-Asian hate crimes rising by roughly 2,000%. Some incidents include a stabbing of a Burmese man and his 2 children in Texas, a man spraying an Asian person with Febreze in the New York subway, a woman being hit by an umbrella and getting stitches, an Asian woman, and innumerable and underreported instances of vandalism, spitting, stalking, and verbal harassment. In the first 2 months of the lockdown alone, 60% of Asian Americans and 30% of all Americans polled reported to have witnessed anti-Asian bias. As a community, we have endured not only the effects of COVID-19 as a pandemic, but we have also felt the pandemic of white supremacy that has so clearly and overtly been infecting the United States. But we continue to resist, survive, and thrive, and today is all about that. So we first wanted to do some geographical check-ins in the context of this anti-Asian racism, as well as the indefinite hold on live performance. We wanted to see what CAATA members are doing and faring, both as theater artists and Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders during the lockdown. So first, let's hear briefly from people in each region. Let's hear from Joining us in Honolulu, again, Hailiopua and Kahai.
I promised that we had more time to discuss this. So here we are back. We're back. So, minutes ago, the new mayor of Honolulu released a statement that he will not move Oahu to Tier 1, despite the continued spike in cases over the past week. He also opposes another lockdown. And I can't understand why we are opening up Hawaii, even though the numbers point to the fact that the requirements for Tier 1 have been filled. I have to wonder who benefits from this decision, right? Who stands to benefit, and who suffers, right? It seems to be that we as a people do not have control over those decisions. And I think, Kaha, if we can talk maybe about numbers and how that numbers game is played.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
yeah.
I mean, that reporting of numbers as it relates to this tier system of the recovery, so much of the recovery, as it's focused on in that plan, is the economics of it, is how does tourism benefit from this? How, we can't talk about shutting down. We just talk about moving forward. I think that was the the main statement of our mayor is we're looking forward, and we got to look back, and even before we do that, we got to look at what's happening right now. So the numbers, as Hailey mentioned, we are in the numbers that would qualify us to move back down to that Tier 1 for higher precautions, for smaller group convenings, and even at that, it feels like that system was created in a very performative sense, that's really just for the optics, because nowhere on there is it addressed that tourism might have to shut down, that we might have to do significant lockdowns. It's really hard, and for me, just on that number, that number reporting specifically, the fact that they are absolutely manipulating the data. I don't want to sound like a conspiracy theorist here, but the numbers that we are now focusing on have removed sections of our community just in service of keeping that tier system in place. The incarcerated community was completely removed. And this is at a time where the private prison system has done a horrible job at containing the virus within their institutions. And that's also not to mention in Hawaii, we have a disproportionate community of Native Hawaiians within those institutions. So why are those numbers not reported? Because they're removed from general community contact, but that doesn't satisfy any of us.
Especially because there is interaction. We all know that our local people work at these institutions, right? They work in the prisons, either in the medical field or as guards, or in food and beverage, right? There is contact, right? And so just stating the facts. So we got the incarcerated community not counted. We also have non-residents not counted. And don't forget the entire military population that is not a part of those counts. So the numbers that are being shared with us is really only Hawaii residents who do not fall into these categories. And so there's a skew there, right? It's not conspiracy, there is a skew. And we all know that it's a game of numbers, right? We all know that's how statistics work. I think the other thing to mention, is it's difficult to not see this through a lens of the history that has been. So when we look historically, the dissemination of, or decimation, I'm sorry, of Kanaka in these lands and also other Native peoples. We see this as an extension of settler colonialism. It, you know, and it is those settlers who are making the decisions about how we move forward, right? And as this pandemic is happening, right, we have a huge hospital right now who their nurses are considering striking right now because they have not been able to find agreement in their contract renewal, right?
And in no small part is that they're raising the red flags of safety concerns. They have
yes,
been reusing their N95 masks, and you know that's just one of the things that has gone public. So, you know, if we have our nurses saying that it's not safe and that they are not being respected in the middle of a pandemic, what hope can we really have? Like, it's how do we have optimism about that situation? You know, contrast that. You know, Hailey, you brought up the point of settler colonialism. Right now, that part of that manipulation of numbers and, you know, all in service of tourism. Part of that tourism element is the, you know, the fact that we're all working from homes. There's a big marketing push to change your strategy from working at home to work from Hawaii.
right.
Right? To come here, please come here and you know, live out your pandemic here in Hawaii. From communities that are just dealing with huge explosions of the virus. That's the message that's going out, and that's what the manipulation of messaging is causing.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
realtors are saying that the $1 million mark home and above, they're seeing a boom right now because you have these executives, you have these individuals who can work from home, moving here from the continental US. And so what does that do to our market for our people here?
Right. And
Right.
that settler colonialism comes with a lot of wealth dynamics that, again, right in the middle of a pandemic, we're seeing that the inequities of wealth. Just one other point I wanted to bring up. You know, we brought up the fact that Kapi'olani Medical Center has nurses that are shrinking. Kapi'olani Medical Center was started by Queen Kapi'olani to benefit the women and children, the Native Hawaiian women and children of Hawaii. Likewise, we have Queen's Medical Center started by Queen Emma to particularly to deal with the Native population being decimated by the smallpox virus. And again, we want to talk about repeating history and trying and like the unwillingness to learn from our history, our shared history. You know, I talk a lot about optics at this time. Yeah, and really the optics of a month ago, the first recipient of the COVID-19 vaccine in Hawaii was at Queen's Medical Center, started by Queen Emma to benefit the Native Hawaiian people in a pandemic. You know who that first recipient was? A white man. And that dosage was administered by an Asian woman. And I think, again, you know, optics falls away at some point, and really, you know, we want people, we want first responders to get that virus. We want all of our community to get that vaccine coming. But you gotta think, what are the messages being shared right now, and what are the stories to tell from that? Yeah.
And so I guess we just really hope that there's going to be more focus on the indigenous people, the Pacific people, the people of this land, and healing us and getting us the vaccine and getting us to a place where we feel comfortable leaving our homes, and we feel that we can get back to a new normal. before opening the doors and inviting wealthy people to buy up land, which makes things increasingly harder for local people to own their homes and to have opportunity to be homeowners. We know that our houseless problem is off the charts right now. I mean, with the increased evictions and whatnot. So I think what we hope for is that we're able to take care of ourselves first
Yes.
before we think about people's enjoyment, to come and enjoy Hawaii, to have a vacation. This is not a time to take a vacation,
Yeah.
right? This is,
Absolutely.
and I'll just share a personal anecdote. We went to the beach recently, and here on the windward side of Oahu, and there was so many tourists on that beach without mask, right? And they're running around and having a good time and eating out at restaurants and doing all of these things. And we are concerned for our well-being. I mean, we don't want to catch anything. We don't want to be another statistic. But people are taking vacations.
Yeah.
And that is a source of, I mean, that is a reason for concern. Yeah.
And that's a big part of our, our need to postpone Confest, and because of our desire to care for our community. And there's always a point, right? So I just a little shout out to the Hawaii Commission, the Hawaii State Commission on the Status of Women, for just having all of this in mind and proposing a feminist pandemic relief package focused on Indigenous people, focused on working families, focused on the immigrant communities, the houseless, and really centering recovery around our needs and not what our corporate overlords, excuse me for saying that, but 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 instead of centering on their needs, because that's really what we're getting right now, and which makes it increasingly hard to trust the government response at these times. But there has to be some positive, and there has to be some good work that's happening within our community. So just very quickly, Hailey, do you want to just highlight anything at UH?
So I think I will just say that we are doing our best to pivot, to navigate, to get through this. We've had the opportunity to do some online productions, and that has been a source of happiness for us. I think it has helped to kind of reinvigorate our activism and reinvigorate our artistic productivity, even though we're working in these confines. And yeah, we're home, so we're able to kind of ruminate on all these things and help ourselves create for this time. And I don't want to run on too long. We probably said more than enough about Hawaii, and we need to be careful. Right? We should be careful.
Yeah.
So I do again want to turn back to Leslie Ishii, and she's going to share a video report from the unceded lands of the Tlingit people and the Dena'ina people of Douglas, Juneau, and Anchorage, Alaska. Leslie.
Hi, I'm Leslie Ishii, Artistic Director here at Perseverance Theater, and also the fairly new board president of the Consortium of Asian American Theaters and Artists. And I am zooming in from the unceded lands of the Akukuan peoples and the Takukuan, the neighbors to the south. And we honor culture, tradition, language, ways of life of the Alaska Native peoples, elders, ancestors, and their descendants. And so Gunashish, Hawa, and Doyaksin. And I also want to acknowledge and honor the Dena'ina peoples, where we also conduct our work up in the Anchorage area of Alaska, Anchorage. So at Chinangeli, yes. And it is my total honor and pleasure to welcome Joe Bedard, our board president at Perseverance Theater. Welcome, Joe. And
Thank you. Thank you.
with us. Yes.
Thank you for that wonderful land acknowledgement. My name is Joe Bedard. Kaik Buk Kaik Ba. It's my Inupiaq name, given to me by my grandfather on my mother's side, who is from Koyuk, Alaska, up in Inupiaq territory. Kaik Chuk Kaik Ba means kayaker without a kayak. It's my grandfather's sense of humor way of saying I'm a city native. That's a different story.
Beautiful. Well, welcome to this conversation. We just have a brief moment as we're in this episode with CAATA, Confest, and the Return to the Source series that HowlRound is hosting. And we're asking the question for this episode, where are we now, given the conditions of this ongoing pandemic? And I thought, we've had such informative conversations. I've learned so much from you. I thought it really important as we're building coalition and solidarity with other BIPOC communities to invite you to share your perspective on where you think we are.
What we are, from the board perspective, looking like we're going to, as a theater company, make it through this pandemic. It is extraordinary amount of just an extraordinary amount of work that the staff and the leadership have put into getting us to this point, and it's a story of resiliency, and I'm glad to be part of that. The pandemic, in essence, has made our business model a public health hazard, and as you know, I worked in infectious control and infectious disease warden while I was in the Army as a medic and a nurse at Triple Army Medical Center down in Hawaii. There I learned a lot about outbreaks, pandemics, and worked with USAMRIID and CDC folks for many years. And those virologists and epidemiologists are doing fantastic work, and always have doing fantastic work. I'm always struck with one of the virologists who told me that if the American public knew how many outbreaks and pandemics USAMRIID, which is the Army version of the CDC, and the CDC, as well as the World Health Organization, stop in a given month, month after month, year after year, everyone wouldn't know what to do with themselves. It just takes one to get out, and here we are. It's a 1 in 100-year situation, but for Native American and many minorities around the world and indigenous peoples around the world, this is an old story that gets passed down generation beyond generation. So, as I've said many times, the outbreak and pandemic experience for Western world, particularly baby boomers, give or take, and beyond, hasn't experienced that. But the greatest generation, all the way back, it was part of their consciousness of having to deal with smallpox outbreaks, measles outbreaks, polio outbreaks. You know, the president of the United States during World War II, FDR, was a polio survivor, and it put him in a wheelchair for the rest of his life. So it was just part of the American and Western consciousness until it wasn't. Vaccines and antibiotics and healthcare advancements created multiple generations of folks that had no idea that this was a thing. Versus our grandparents who were like, oh yeah, old hat. But for the indigenous peoples in North America and probably around the world, dealing with outbreaks and pandemics is ingrained into the culture. And I'm not going to get into any of the statistics. Statistics always makes everything feel like quack, quack, bad news. But suffice to say, the 2009 H1N1 swine flu pandemic that went through, which was the same genetic RNA as the Spanish flu, 1918. That's why it was such cause for concern. According to the Native Hospital here in Anchorage, the fatality rate amongst Native Americans, Native Alaskans, was 4 times higher than the world rate. And that is purely a function that many Western diseases were not introduced into the human indigenous population until 1492. And then there was the biological warfare that was used in the genocide of indigenous peoples. I'm not going to get into that either. Let's we'll go look it up. But where the arts can help fill that void is something that you and I have discussed a lot. In that, from a First Alaskans Institute conference, we had a Maori contingent guests come up and share their experiences, their resiliency, their reemergence, and their rebuilding and decolonization for their peoples, and why they wanted to come and share with us. They did wonderful work in public and post-secondary education and indigenizing that, revitalization of their languages and their culture and their arts. And they wanted to share how they're doing it, because they also want to learn how we're doing healthcare up here in Alaska, and what else we're doing with our Native corporations, our nonprofits, and of course, First Alaskans Institute. And something that they shared with us was that First Alaskans Institute asked respectfully if they could borrow, and by all means, I'll share it with you here today, is what is good for the indigenous peoples, what's good for the Nupiaq, what's good for the Maori, what's good for the Tlingit, it's good for the rest of the world. We're having to figure out and work through these problems, these catastrophic genocidal problems of the past, and the systemic racism of today, the representation issues of today, and the full 9 yards. That you could go look at the catastrophic statistics, missing and murdered Indigenous women, full 9 yards, and how we are addressing that, how we are working it with woefully not resourced situations, is the solutions we have come up with in those areas is good for the rest of the world. And one of the things I'm interested in the arts, is decolonizing the arts, in that in many indigenous cultures, certainly the ones I know of in the state of Alaska, there's no compartmentalizing of art, there's no compartmentalizing of literature, there's no compartmentalizing of science, there's no compartmentalizing of work and home life. It's all one piece. There's no separating, and nothing. This is a great example of it. This is the halibut hook, Tlingit halibut hook. It's a 10,000-year-old design. This is one's the eagle design. Here's the hook, and here's where the line would go, and you'd put the bait right here. This is a piece of art, it's a piece of science, and it's a way to make a living, and it's a way to represent and communicate. And the science of it is, you don't want to catch the large halibut to too big of halibut, because they're halibut, are the large halibuts are the female, and you want to make sure that the next generation is sustained, and that you'll have a sustained fishery. And the male halibut, then the younger halibut, will strike sideways and get hooked, and it'll then flip them upside down, and you can bring them up safely without overturning your canoe. But it is a perfect fusion of science, art, and way of being and communication, as they make eagle ones and raven ones and wolf ones, and it's a piece of art, and it's a way of being. And here, Leadership of Perseverance Theater, we're decolonizing and trying to decolonize our theater, so we may share it with the rest of the world. What's good for Perseverance Theater is good for the rest of the world.
Oh, well spoken, Joe. Thank you so much. I know we have just these few moments, so it's been an honor and a pleasure. That beautiful wisdom that you're sharing with us. And in this episode, I'm sure, as you're one of the first ones to share, this will set the whole episode forth in right purpose. So
Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, Guyana, thank you for having me.
Yes, Ganashish. Oh my goodness. Once again, Ganashish, Hawa, Indoyaksen, Guyana, to Joe Bedard, our board president of Perseverance Theater. Whenever I have the great opportunity to speak with him, I learn great volumes of wisdom. And today, just so you know, through Perseverance Theater, he has written a very powerful statement giving the current events of the insurrection, which I know we will talk about a little later in this program. So once again, my deepest gratitude to Joe for joining us. So with that, I am tuning in from Tlingit Ani of the Occoquan and our neighbors to the south, the Tacoquan. We honor their traditions, their culture, as Joe was saying, for our resilience, bringing forth all these ways of life and honoring them. And as we move now, you've seen Hawaii to Alaska, and now we move a little further west to Los Angeles. It's my great honor and pleasure to bring back to our screen the wonderful and talented Leilani Chan, who has just lent her leadership nationally, locally where she is, and how grateful we are that she's been one of the founding members of CAATA. So welcome back to the screen, Leilani. I look forward to your report.
Thank you so much, Leslie. And I think my report back is going to remain a bit Pacific Northwest as well. As you know, CAATA, my company and my home right now is based in Los Angeles, land of the Tongva and the original caretakers of the Los Angeles area. And CAATA, my company, is a nomadic group. So even though I'm based in Los Angeles, we're very much connected to communities in Hawaii, of course, Oregon, Minneapolis. And I wanted to just, since the pandemic has happened, we wanted to connect with as many of our community members as possible. And I think you might remember, Leslie, the Confest in Oregon. We at OSF, we brought down community members from Portland, connected with IRCO, the Immigrant Refugee Community Organization, and Refugee Resettlement from Oregon. And so those families and youth came down as part of the pre-conference and post-conference of Confest, and they got to see plays at Confest. But I believe, what year was that? It was 2016.
16.
And I believe we knew the new president was coming in, but the Muslim ban hadn't been set yet, or I wasn't sure what the timing was, but I knew that these communities who had just been recent arrivals might not be many more of them coming in. And so I was very much interested in connecting. Yeah?
It was just before the election.
It was just,
because I remember Andrea Asaf, one of our longtime board members, was concerned about all that was getting ripped up from Muslims and the Muslim ban.
Yeah, and then right after, I believe the TCG conference was up in Portland, and we were also trying to reconnect with the Muslim community then. And then there was the violence on the Max, which meant our entire Muslim community in Portland was at the mosque responding. And so we actually ended up working with the Bhutanese community in Portland instead. But I've had a chance to reconnect with Chanpon Silapasai in Portland. You remember her?
Yes.
Of the part of the dynamic team of Asian American women, Southeast Asian women in Portland and in Oregon. Chanpon is part of the American Immigrant Lawyer Association of Oregon, which is an advocacy organization. And I had asked her, is there hope? Because in the platform of the new Biden-Harris administration, they promised to lift the Muslim ban and increase the refugee numbers. And I said, well, is the cap just going to be open and we're going to be welcoming refugees again? And both she and my other friend, partner, colleague, Carol Gomez, who worked here with the program for torture victims, they work with asylum seekers. And I asked kind of both of them, like, what is going to happen? Carol said they're not coming. No, she's not preparing for a huge influx of refugees coming, because the support services and nonprofit organizations that support asylum seekers have been decimated. Some of them no longer exist. Some of them are operating on very few staff members. I remember Catholic Charities had to let go a lot of staff members all over the country. And then even with Carol there, Arabic speakers that volunteer for doing interpretation for recent arrivals, they weren't coming in anymore because there weren't enough Arabic speakers coming in as asylum seekers. So Carol's saying that that's not going to happen for many years, and that there's already a backlog of people waiting to come into the country. And then Chanpon said, what we can do is that the Biden-Harris team has promised that in the first 100 days, they're going to be investigating where things are at and what's going to happen. So, and what they can push. So her advice to us is to remain vigilant and be ready to really push, because especially with the Georgia election making the Senate Democrat majority, we need to really make sure to hold our officials, our government officials, responsible for comprehensive immigration reform.
Yes.
And that we need to be vigilant about that. And it's going to take several years before we recover from the damage that's been done. So thank you, Leslie, for talking, for being here with me about that. Any questions?
I know that Biden-Harris ran with that on their platform. So yes, we can keep them accountable. And there are there's other coalition building around that, and certainly connected to the detention centers currently around this country as well.
Especially, and that's another point that Chanpon brought up was, the way our communities are affected are different, but we can organize together to make sure that those detention centers are closed and the families on the borders can be reunited. And we're going to need to be vigilant, even though there's a change in the administration. And we can talk more about this when we all come back together. I think we're going to move a little further east on Turtle Island. And now we'll bring back KT to do a report out on Austin, Texas.
Thank you, Leilani. I'm as Leilani said, I'm calling in from Austin, Texas, which is on the unceded land of many peoples, including the Alabama Coushatta, the Caddo, the Coahuiltecan, the Comanche, the Kickapoo, the Lipan Apache, and the Tonkawa, among others. So COVID has been very interesting in Texas, both as an Asian American person as well as a theater maker. Texas, some people are surprised to learn that Texas has the third largest Asian American population in the country after California and New York, although it is, of course, lower per capita percentage than many other places, including New Jersey and, of course, Hawaii. But because of that, we are in a very interesting situation in terms of representation. Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders also are the fastest growing population in Austin. And so, which is also a complex issue because Austin itself is rapidly gentrifying, and Asian Americans are kind of both part of that and also have been in Texas for longer than a lot of people might know. So one of the things that kind of hit close to home was the stabbing that I had mentioned earlier in the history of disease in Texas. Disease in Asian Americans, and that happened in Midland, which is north of here, but it still felt like very much nearby. And so Austin Asian Americans have in some ways been a kind of model minority-esque population, but also we have been trying to organize more and resist when possible. And then during there, that also kind of moves on to how we've been faring in this uprising that started in the summer that we're going to hear more about next. But of course, there were Black Lives Matter movements in Austin that were in relation to many movements that happened across the country. But one of the things that was, I guess, hit again was a local important point was a fatal shooting between two private citizens, both of whom were white men at Black Lives Matter. I don't know why. It always makes me feel weird when I talk about this, is how there is a fatal shooting because in Texas you can bring firearms to demonstrations. So there was someone who was marching in solidarity with Black Lives, who was carrying an AK rifle, and a rideshare driver drove into the crowd and shot the white man with the AK rifle who was pushing his fiance, who is a Black woman in a wheelchair. So it's been very strange and complicated, not least of which is due to the fact that Austin is a very blue city in a very red state. Although it has been interesting to be in Texas in the first time since the Johnson era, I believe, when on election night, we actually went deep into the night, which I guess was, I don't know, around 11-ish, not knowing whether to call Texas. And that is the first time that has happened in my 15 plus years living here. Meanwhile, the Austin theaters have been organizing very heavily over Zoom to try to make sure that emergency support is available to theater artists. Our theater scene has completely shut down. We do still do virtual events, but aside from the rare kind of drive-through or socially distanced outdoor thing, many of our gig work dried up. Part of that was due to South by Southwest being canceled, and that is one of the biggest income generators in the Austin area. So that's been very difficult, especially for a lot of theater people who end up basically making a lot of their day job money due to festivals and so on and so forth. But that's where we are right now. I'm really looking forward to the conversation later on because I have a lot of thoughts and feelings about what has already come up. But so next we're going to continue in our journey east, although it's more directly north than really east. And we're going to hear from Twin Cities, Minnesota, with Meena Natarajan from Pangea Theater. Thank you. Hi, Meena.
Hi, Katie. Thank you so much. Appreciate hearing from all of you. It was beautiful and such an honor to hear from everybody across the country. And my heart goes out to all of you. And I'm calling in from Minneapolis, and it is an honor and privilege to live and work on the traditional homeland of the Dakota people, and to be in community with Dakota, Anishinaabe, and other First Nations people in the Twin Cities. And COVID has really affected us for sure, especially BIPOC people in Minnesota. And it's affected Indigenous communities more deeply than most other communities. It's also affected African American and Latinx communities more than other BIPOC communities. And we have multiple Asian diaspora populations like Hmong and Karen and South Asian communities here, and anti-Asian sentiments and actions have been on the rise here. Um, I've got a very close friend and so I've heard lots of unreported documentation of this. I have a very close friend who's Vietnamese American, and her mother was harassed in a grocery store, and so many other incidents just like this, where people have been deeply affected by the anti-Asian, because of the rhetoric that's happening in this country. I'm also the co-artistic and executive director of Pangea World Theatre, where we live and work, and we live and work on a street called Lake Street. And I'll say a little bit more about that because it's significant here. And COVID has affected so many of the nonprofits and artists we work with in the Twin Cities. And so many of our larger institutions have laid people off during this pandemic. Pangea's entire staff consists of artists, a practice that enables us to provide artists with steady income and support as they pursue their craft. And so many of our contracted workers have lost their other work as a result of layoffs or temporarily shut down businesses. And so now they rely solely on Pangea for income during this time. And we've made a commitment to our staff that there will be no layoffs and no one furloughed. And of course, we've had a loss of income during this time. We've lost ticket sales. We couldn't hold a gala last year. So many things that have happened to all of us across the country as we face this extraordinary pandemic that's happening right now. And especially for us, the pandemic of racism is very, very real in the Twin Cities. May 25th was when Mr. George Floyd was murdered. And it was really a line in the sand for us. We saw a Black man being lynched right in front of us, very close to the place that we work, very close to where we live, And then there followed an uprising where the streets that we lived and worked, Lake Street that I spoke about earlier, was burnt down in the uprising that followed. And many of the destruction was caused by white supremacists as well. Many of the businesses and restaurants we work with closely burnt down. You can see the slides here where these are restaurants that we very closely worked with, where we are, contributed to the economy of these places. And these buildings are very close to the third precinct that was also burnt down during this time. And so for us, after a moment of pause, after we were, looked at what this was about, after we considered, talked to our staff, nobody could go back to business as usual. We had to do something about this artistically and also be in community with our artists. So we turned to the artists and community to respond. And I'm going to present a project that we have called Lake Street Story Circles. And Lake Street Story Circles is based on our creative placekeeping work on Lake Street. So we live and work on Lake Street, and we commissioned 10 artists before COVID during this in this Lake Street Story Circles project. And all of these artists pivoted when COVID happened, because of the pandemic of racism, the murder of George Floyd, they pivoted yet again to figure out what they wanted to do in a socially distant, safe kind of way. So the Lake Street Story Circles, all the artists held story circles in their different ways, and then they created out of the project, and these projects were videotaped and broadcast. So we kind of turned to the video as a medium for this time. So I want to highlight 2 of these 10 projects, and you'll see a little excerpts from these 2 projects. And the first one is by Filipina American Sandy Agustin. It's a project called Corner Conversations, and she held her stories circles on street corners, the street corners of Lake Street and many, many streets on Lake Street. And what she did was she listened to people's wishes for Lake Street, where she grew up. So can we start the first video to show you Sandy Agustin's, the example of Sandy's work.
When I was 11 years old, I had a newspaper route right here in South Minneapolis, where I grew up. I walked the streets only slightly spooked in the wee hours of the morning, 5 a.m. coming way too soon. daydreaming, feeling safe, knowing the familiar brick and mortar, the places where my father danced, where I danced, where we ate, where we played, where we were. Oh. Now, this place with the acrid stench of burned out memories, the dehumanization of the place and of the bodies that frequented, the lives that still move forward, the stories, the wishes, the dreams, las historias, los deseos, los sueños. He moved to Lake Street to keep his 12-year-old black son safe, to avoid the gangs, he said. So why is he questioned outside of his workplace at the Minneapolis public schools, badge fully visible, only a cigarette eating away at his lunch break? Can't even send my bills in. Can't even access my mail. Can't access my life. You know, me? I just want some soul food. Food for my aching soul, food for marching on. Well, I'd say I want a job. A fair job where people are treated with respect, you know, not discriminated against. Gardens to sink my fingers in. Well, soil, not like my homeland, but soil to remind me, you know, my gut that I belong here. Gardening, gardens to feed my family, to feed my community. Oh, yeah, and art to add beauty, to connect us, like the mural that used to be on the old Migizi. I just want to feel safe. Are you listening? Stop just feeding us. Help us get jobs. Help us get housing. Did you ask my opinion? Did you ask my opinion? Do you remember my name? We didn't do this, you know. But we know who did. We know who did this. Just don't forget about us, because we're still here.
So that was Sandy Agustin. And her project, what she did was create these masks. And she created these masks made of giant sheets and created and put people's wishes for Lake Street on those giant sheets. And that's what you saw at the end there. So it was brilliant. It combined this, you know, COVID, it combined what we had to do with social distancing, and it also combined what happened in Minneapolis. It was such a relevant piece of work that Sandy Agustin created, an artist that we deeply love and respect, and and lives in this neighborhood and works in this neighborhood as well. The next artist that I want to present to you is Rebecca Nicholson, and she created a writing circle on Zoom. And her piece is called An Awakening, a Reckoning, a Search for Breath. And here is an excerpt of that piece. And here's Rebecca Nicholson, and that piece will speak for itself.
heard you, hears you, George. You were calling out to your mother. She heard you, she hears you. I hear you, I hear you going home, going home to a place where your breath returns, a place where you can sing, a place where your breath is new and you're not worried about a thing, not worried about a thing. George, you were calling out to your mother. She heard you, she hears you. We hear you, we hear you calling out. We breathe you, we breathe you in and out. George, you were calling out to your mama. She heard you, she hears you, she hears you.
Thank you. So that was Rebecca Nicholson, and just created a really powerful piece of work. And I guess we're asking this question: what does it mean to be in community with centering Black artists and Black Lives Matter? And if you would like to watch all of these videos, we've supported 10 artists commissioned 10 artists in this Lake Street Story Circles project. And they're all on the Penja website. And they come from a variety of backgrounds. And really, all the work is in and around Lake Street. And really is deeply about place. It's grounded in Lake Street. It's grounded in Minneapolis. It's grounded in story. It's grounded in each other. It's grounded in place. And so it's a real opportunity to watch what's happening down on the ground in our place. And the other thing that we did was we commissioned the artists in our staff to also create work. And they all responded with what's happening, with strength, with spirit, with resistance, power, politics, vision, relationships, history, healing, and survival and joy. And so I would really love you to watch those shows, those pieces as well, because they're more than a piece, they're sacred. All of these pieces are sacred. And as a result of what happened, we commissioned close to 20 artists and supported about more than 100 artists during this time. And in addition, I just want to say a little bit more about what we are doing in that area. We're part of a movement to rebuild the area that you saw earlier in both the video and the photos, the spaces that are burning in the video, and also the photographs that we showed. We've created a nonprofit organization with all the businesses, with other organizations in the area that we live. And the organization is called Longfellow Rising. And we want to rebuild, we want to fight displacement, we want to build with stakeholders in the area. We're all collaboratively trying to build spaces of justice and peace during this time, both in terms of vision and actual building. And we want to build it in a way that is truly a pluriverse. Honoring the uprising that followed the police killing of George Floyd, Longfellow Rising is really committed to racial equity, committed to worker justice, cultural vitality, and building belonging for everyone, not just some. And this really feels more important even after what happened this Wednesday at the Capitol. How and what do we do, all of us, to resist the forces of hate? Like, how do we react? What we do is so important right now. And how can we build solidarity with each other across difference and also across different cultures? And that's really what Pangea is about. And that's, I think, what CAATA, all of us in CAATA are about, is how do we build this solidarity across cultures? How do we build so that we can all build a better world? And all of us are in the circle. So thanks so much. And I look forward to hearing from all of you. And now I want to turn it over to Ariel Estrada from New York, who's going to present us with what's happening in the East Coast and probably New York. Thank you so much for listening to me.
Hey, there we go. I'm no longer muted. Thank you so much, Mina, for introducing me. Hello, and I'm definitely going to talk about New York a bit. My name is Ariel Estrada. My pronouns are he, him, his, and I'm broadcasting from my apartment here on the traditional unceded land stolen from the Lenape people, now known as New York City, in Manhattan. I am, if you're visually impaired, I am a middle-aged Filipino-American man. I'm wearing a black shirt and a black jacket with my green screen behind me. This being home and a Zoom or Zoom-ish, I will likely have a visit from one of my two cats, Didi and Gogo, as well. I am an actor, an arts administrator, and the founder and producing artistic director of Leviathan Lab. We're a very small creative studio for early and mid-career Asian American artists here in New York since 2009. Our work in 2021 is going to include a workshop of my solo performance work adapted for all-on broadcast called Full Contact. Stay tuned for more details from us on that. And we have a bunch of readings of a bunch of new Asian American plays, including 2020 Kilroy's Lister, Roger Q. Mason, Gavin Trinidad, Cherry Lusai, and more. And you can always check out our work over at leviathanlab.com. I also serve CAATA as its marketing and membership coordinator, and I'm also the online producer for this very series you are watching right now, which will broadcast every second Sunday of the month through April 2021. I am also the diversity and inclusion coordinator at Actors Equity Association, which is the labor union representing American actors and stage managers in the theater. One more thing, I also work for a group called NYC Theater Standards, which, similar to the Chicago area theater standards, looks to create a safe and inclusive working environment for the off-Broadway and indie theater scene here in the city. I'm going to give a very fast and quick and dirty overview of the state of the industry here in New York, which, as I'm sure you all know, was the epicenter of the early days of lockdown. In the before times, NYC was experiencing around even as recently as February 2020, wonderful times, what we were calling a golden age of theater, particularly Asian American theater. Broadway was back in full swing after the 3 days of shutdown that happened after 9/11, plus everything that happened after, and then the 3 days of shutdown after Hurricane Sandy in 2012. In 2018, Broadway experienced its best year ever with 1.8225 billion in grosses. I sure wish I could have that money in the off Broadway and independent theater scene. Performance venues like the Obie Award-winning arts presenter, The Tank, where I served as marketing director from 2017 through 18. We've got places like Dixon Place and the soon-to-be infamous The Flea, among others. And they all joined La Mama as major incubators of new work. For playwrights, we have organizations like The Lark and writers groups like Ensemble Studio Theater Youngblood and the ubiquitous Mayi Theater Writers Lab, who self-describe as the largest collection of Asian American playwrights in the known universe. And they were developing and producing some incredible new voices. And many will recall in that season, in this just previous season, 2019-20, there were at least 10 plays that were being produced or were about to be produced off Broadway. Most of them were Mayi writers, Mayi Writers Labbies, including the multiple award-winning play Cambodian Rock Band by Lauren Yee, Quy Nguyen's Poor Yellow Rednecks, Hansel Jung's Wolf Play, I could keep going, as well as APA playwrights who are not members of Mayi Celine Song's brilliant Endlings, which was at New York Theater Workshop, being one of the main ones, and it was absolutely wonderful. Now, additionally to all that, in the before times, there was a new and sorely needed artistic, social, and economic ecosystem that was being created in the APA theater community, one that was providing a very clear development pathway for individual artists and organizations, starting at off, and indie, moving up to off-Broadway, and then possibly moving up to Broadway, and then even possibly after that, the TV and film industry here, which is in New York, the second largest TV and film industry in the country after LA. Now, also in the before times, there were three major Asian American theater companies. Mai Theater, Pan-Asian Repertory Theater, led by past CAATA, led by CAATA board member and co-treasurer Tisa Chang, new National Asian American Theater Company, led by past CAATA board member Mia Karibak, and all three of those companies had jumped up to off-Broadway contracts. Smaller and about 10 years younger nonprofits, including my company, Leviathan Lab, legendary Byork Lee, and her company, National Asian Artist Projects, which focuses on musical theater, and the Manasa-focused Hypocrite Theater, which is one of the producers of our 2022 Confest featured shows, Eda, Questions for My Father. I believe we just featured that about 2 episodes ago in the series by Aya Aziz. Now, all of those companies were regularly producing work by mid-career artists. And then finally, what especially heartening to me were all of the new Asian American theater companies that were coming up. There was a proliferation of them, and they all worked beyond Asian Americans as a monolith. And these new groups reflected the diversity and cultural specificity of the APA community. There's Ako Docs, Amaterasu Za, focusing in on Japanese American theater artists and kabuki versions of plays from the Western canon. Super cool mission. The very ambitious and very beautiful human beings, David Lee Huynh, Jonathan Castanian, and Carolina Do, and their Vietnamese-led song collective, and they're doing some really exciting work right now. Mixed race initiatives like Hapa Mag and Riso Hapa, they're about to go through a name change. That's led by my dear friend Alex Chester, influencer and actor. And Broadway Diversity Project by School of Rock star Diane Phelan. The Chinese American focused Yangtze Rep led by Chongren Fan. Over in Boston, we're seeing the emergence of Asian American theater artists of Boston, and we're just sort of everywhere now. And it's kind of hard to keep track because there's so many of us, and it was really cool. But more importantly, what those new theaters, and it continues to inspire me no end, was that they're all operating from a we're all in this together model, where we share resources and space and knowledge. And in Leviathan's case, I actually fiscally sponsor some of these artists and collectives, so they don't have to start from scratch. And where our attitude is, the more Asian American theater, the better. And we're not working in competition, but collaboration. Of course, it wasn't all sweetness and light. According to the Asian American Performer Action Coalition's latest visibility report on the 2017-18 season, overall, thanks to Hamilton and all of its tours, we had a higher amount of diverse hiring overall. But there was still racially discriminatory employment practices rife in the business, with 61.5% of roles going to white actors and 6.9% of roles going to APA actors. When you consider that that New York City is at about 15% and growing every year Asian Americans, that's just not acceptable. It was even worse with MENA actors, Middle Eastern, North African actors at 2% casting, 0.02% for indigenous actors. All unacceptable numbers. Now, I think that's the next slide. We can go, oh, yep, here we are, 305 days later. That's perfect. Now, after Mayor de Blasio, His Honor, declared a state of emergency on March 12th, which was also true of a lot of other states as well. The Off-Broadway Alliance first, followed in short order by the Broadway League, announced its shutdown, which continues to this day, officially goes till May 30th, 2021, and we all expect yet another extension at that time. Off Broadway and in the indie scene, that also shut down, along with all restaurants, hotels, sports, and performance venues. Many of you have read the Americans for the Arts reports, saying that nearly 2/3 of arts workers have report being unemployed, and that from April to July of last year, we've lost 1.4 million arts sector jobs, 42.5 million in revenue. Now, in New York, I think those statistics are actually even larger, where we're experiencing 100% unemployment, and even traditional survival jobs for actors are out of the picture. Unemployment insurance has run out or is about to, and many artists I know have moved out of New York, hopefully to return one day, but with rent relief programs nearly non-existent, that possibility is pretty low, if we're being honest. The Actors Fund is helping. I hope you're all donating to them and their work. Orgs like the Episcopal Actors Guild, which has certainly saved my bacon and fed me, literally, at points. It's a drop in the bucket for what the community needs. While our discussion today is primarily focused on the pandemic, the murder of George Floyd and the subsequent protests for racial justice, collective liberation, and police reform have inspired a reckoning in our own theater community. Along with We See You White American Theater, hashtag We See You What, and their demands for a more culturally competent theater, we're seeing reckonings industry-wide with abusive practices, practitioners, and organizations. Again, I mentioned them earlier, perhaps most infamously and well-publicized in the off scene with The Flea and their recent appalling and ethically repugnant jettisoning of its early career artist programs. I bring this up specifically because sadly, this is likely a warning of things to come. As the industry recovers, and we're going to see a lot of pushback from gatekeepers, including, as with The Flea, the busting of workers' rights movements, and taking a page from 45's playbook, defamation suits intended to discourage, silence, intimidate. I think the next slide, please. More about that industry recovery. According to Actors Equity, it took 10 years for the industry to recover from the 3-day shutdown and subsequent reduction in business from 9/11. Took about 8 years to recover from Hurricane Sandy and the 3 days of shutdown in 2012. We are currently on day 305 of the shutdown. Dr. Fauci predicts that New York City Theater will be back as soon as September 2021. And this is only my opinion here, but given the disastrous rollout of the vaccine, the new and more transmissible strains of the virus, and therefore more fatal strains, and then the literal insurrection by white supremacists last week at our nation's capital. With all that in mind, I personally think we're looking at a partial return in the first or even second quarter of 2022. And please, I please hope that I am wrong. So look for dramatic changes in how the business is going to be done, including efforts to stabilize organizations, both large and small, venerable to relatively new. Look for them to stabilize through mergers and coalitions. And unfortunately, also look for them to try to stabilize through efforts to undermine workers' benefits and their rights. In the December 12th online opinion piece, When Broadway Comes Back, 5 Ways the Pandemic Will Transform the Live Theater Industry, Fortune magazine noted that we'll see the following 5 trends on Broadway, which will of course affect the industry at large. Again, this is an opinion piece by Fortune, which reflects their thoughts. It's not a particular endorsement by CAATA or myself, and nor do we feel that this is the definitive future for the industry. But that said, Fortune has some pretty interesting thoughts, including 1, with tourism in decline, look for the artistic work to shift toward the telling of New York East Coast stories to entice New Yorkers to attend, come back. 2, artists were to begin to migrate away from the high cost and now pretty low benefit living of NYC as a theater artist, with a particular focus on theater cities and their relatively low costs of living, including Atlanta and the now blue state of Georgia, yay, Cleveland, Ohio, and Minneapolis, St. Paul. Congratulations, Mina and Lily over at Theater Moo. 3, look for a shift of focus away from New York in general and the ascendancy of regional theaters, with those organizations taking the lead, both economically and artistically. 4, online theater, for better or for worse, is here to stay. And that leads us to 5, because of that. And one more time, I'm going to reinforce that this is Fortune's opinion, not CAATA's or even mine. Jurisdictional boundaries between performers but the performers' unions are becoming more and more blurred. Fortune, to my knowledge, is one of the first major publications to actually express this opinion out loud, or actually in print. They feel like we should look for the performers' unions to consolidate. And they say, quote, a merger of Equity and SAG-AFTRA seems very plausible, even if it isn't imminent, unquote. Now, any of those trends would be earthquake levels of change in our industry, combined with some of the things that we're all doing. We See You What and other movements. We're looking at a complete reimagining of how the business works. I hope that this quick and very dirty overview of the industry in New York helps you as we, 1, help each other to get through this, survive this, hopefully thrive through this. And 2, plan and work for when the industry returns and begins its long road to recovery. Again, I'm Ariel Estrada of Leviathan Lab on Lenape land in NYC. I'm very glad to be here tonight with my brilliant colleagues here in CAATA. And I am very glad to switch it over to the group discussion where we can start discussing all these issues at length.
Thank you, Ariel. And thank you, everyone, for sharing from where you're coming from. I know that whenever we have conversations, I just am completely blown away by, like, some of you I talk with weekly, and still when I hear all of your reports as one body of information, it's overwhelming and encouraging just to know how engaged and concerned we are as artists and as human beings. So then there's the question of, we all kind of referred to it, but there are all these concerns and, both challenges and hopes that we're working through. And then meanwhile, last week, less than a week ago, a huge group of white supremacists stormed the US Capitol. I will say for me, it was terrifying. It was not surprising, but it was still terrifying. And in the context of everything else that I've been experiencing and feeling, and then that I know that, we just heard from you all, I'm wondering how we're feeling about this and our role in, or not in what's to come.
Wow.
That is such a hard question to answer, Katie. I mean, it's like difficult. And the first thought that occurred to me when when I saw that happening on TV was the fact that if it had been brown or black people who had been there, there would have been body bags coming out of that.
I mean, yeah. And the actual reality is, had those conversations about that kind of event happened in Black and brown communities, had that kind of social media presence been there 2 weeks before leading up to it, it would never have happened because they would have shut it down way beforehand. They would have had the forces available to keep the protesters out. The fact that that these terrorist acts were being discussed for weeks, months, years, and being incited by the very top levels of government, all in the support of, I'm gonna say it again, all in support of white male fragility.
Yes.
Yeah.
And please, Hailey, I was actually going to ask you because yesterday we were talking about how it echoes the overthrow of the Hawaiian Kingdom that you had mentioned earlier in your report out. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, mahalo for the question, and mahalo for this opportunity for us to share and share so deeply and in a profound way. I'm grateful for this opportunity to be in conversation with you all. I think that we see, the suppression, right, of Native peoples and ideas, and this kind of support, underlining support of domestic terrorism and white supremacy, right? Just by the fact that there was not arms out, riot gear out there. And when I saw everything that was happening, I couldn't help but think about how many nations America has done this to, and how this is very representative of the American way of governing, right? And taking over with arms, right? And those images of the US military coming into Honolulu, was apparent in these images that we've seen of this kind of white supremacist rising up across the continental US, right? And so all of those thoughts come flooding back, all of those experiences come flooding back, and there's just this there's just this pain, inside when I think about the dismissal of Kanaka and Oiwi and indigenous peoples, and then the abuse of other people of color, whether it be through slavery, workforce, exploitation. It's hard to digest, and it's hard to process, I would say. And all of that stuff just gets exacerbated, right? All the inequities, all of that just gets exacerbated in all of this. And I agree with what everybody was saying, and sorry if I'm going long, but if there was people of color on social media making statements like these white groups were saying and doing, it would have been squashed. We would have never seen them make it up those stairs, let alone into the Capitol. So there's just a lot of work that needs to be done, and yeah.
I think it's also the fact that like people of color movements would have been like, there have been so many people of color movements that have been peaceful, that happened this year, that led to that resulted in, I don't know, it's not that I wanted more fatalities, but that resulted in more state motivated, state initiated violence. And that in fact the state stood down in a way that is alarming. Not that I want the state to stand up most of the time, but it is so telling who the state does not enact fatal violence on and who it does. And I think these last 12 months have been so instructional and clear in a way that I think more people are seeing. Not that it wasn't there before. And then I'm also, I don't know if you all noticed that like there was a whole thing about a Chinese scroll that was torn down in the Capitol. That stood out to me because it was very interesting. I've been doom scrolling, and they're like, not much art was destroyed. All of the statues are fine. However, the Congressman Lewis, exhibition was completely ransacked. And then meanwhile, this Chinese scroll was pulled off of the speaker's wall. Maybe it wasn't a speaker, some congressperson's wall, and torn to shreds with this white woman saying, like, we don't need that Chinese shit. That's like a direct quote because a member of the press was there. And I don't know, it's just, and that the crowd basically stalked and ran after this black man. He was a cop, but that, like, they were literally a lynch mob with a rope. The rope was intended for Mike Pence, but still, there are just so many echoes of history that are so eerie and terrifying to me.
Yeah.
When you say state, you don't want more state violence, but deeper than that, it's the structure of who is motivating the state, right? It's primarily white driven, white run. So when I almost am starting to say, instead of state, say, look at the white run, white led, like we often say, and while I don't condone any of that violence, absolutely not. It was an insurrection. It was not a protest. It was not a direct action even. It was insurrection, clear. I do have to say, I look at I'm trying to understand, it's almost not rational, so my brain keeps going round and round, but I'm trying to look at that footage on news and hear the people that were trying in violence, but for help. And I look at how, granted, they have white privilege, but it's very clear our structures don't work for anybody. And that those largely poorer or struggling white people who were the tools of the white leadership in power. We have to take a hard look at that too. That we're all often made to be tools or alibis for the white structural power that's in place. So our structures do not work for anybody. And we have to also really make sure, I think of you, Haile Kahai, and myself now, we're in Hawaii, we're in Alaska, and most of our state is rural. I think of Minneapolis, St. Paul. You all know most of your state is rural. California, most of your state is rural. And these are folks that also feel disenfranchised and disconnected. And our structures don't reach everybody. They marginalize, let alone our BIPOC artist communities and wider communities. But I think about the marginalized and the disenfranchised, and we have to remember the rural areas as well. But that's what I'm coming away with. It's that our systems and the power structures, they don't work for anybody.
Yeah, and that's part of the reason why we're seeing an increasing number of our indigenous communities go to the right and become Trump supporters. When I see Kanaka flying Trump flags from their pickup trucks, it is just, that image is so hard to how do you get there? But we know how they get there. It's because the systems are not there to support them. It's because at every level, and this is not restricted to Republicans or Democrats, it's the system as it stands, focused on, again, the inequities of wealth and power in this country. We can't, we can't just explain it away and be like, oh, that's just my right-wing cousin over there. But it just highlights how important our work within the communities are.
Yeah. I think it also points to the global, fascism arising all over the world. I mean, many of us are connected to our diasporic communities across the world, and this is not a phenomenon just in the United States. I do think, though, that the fact of empire in the United States and in the Western world has a lot to do with how our communities have developed across the world, but it's also empire within the United States with indigenous communities and communities of color as well. And like you said, Leslie, I feel like it's not good for anyone. It's not good for anyone across class. I mean, there's class warfare, but there's also this idea of systems, the idea of the education system, the idea of journalism, all of which, it supports something that doesn't work for any of us. But the thing that I felt really heartened about, though, that I've seen over the last is how we've built movement with each other, is how Asian Americans, we never hear of this, but how Asian Americans had to do with what happened in Georgia as well. It's also like what happened with, and how Asian Americans have really like spoken up for like the movement to abolish those horrible, horrible camps in, like the Suru for Solidarity event that was really about like, let's take those camps away, let's take those babies out of those camps, and let's not do that to everybody. And I feel like that's where our strength lies, is how to build those solidarities with each other, and how to build those solidarities with other people of color, and how to really build that solidarity with everybody, not leave anybody out of the equation, because it doesn't serve anyone when we do.
Yes, and I know with this book, I just want to share this, that the research is coming out now as I work with the University of Alaska Southeast researcher around impact of COVID. But we're also lifting up that this is what indigenous Native peoples have been sharing since time immemorial, that when you work in community, you have sustainability, you have the ability to thrive. And so my point to many spaces that I'm in now is, please do not make us choose between our sustainability and justice, sustainability or liberation, our ability to survive or liberation. It's all connected. We must always think and strategize with all of that together. It's not either or you have this disenfranchisement, this disconnect, It feeds the internalized oppression. It feeds the oppressor to feel like, oh, I have to get mine. The individualism of white supremacy. It's actually part of the remedy will be being in community, fostering and building community, rebuilding community.
As I'm listening to everyone, I'm thinking of what I learned from an urban bushwoman workshop, which is how do we use this in our work? And at the same time as I say that, I'm like, how do I work? Like, it's just everything going on. I go from paralyzed to like overdrive within a day. And I'm just so amazed at the work that everybody is doing. And Nina, I want to know more about how you've supported all those artists, because this pivoting is like, we're already pretzel twisted into making grants work for what we want to do creatively, and then having to pivot now to support artists on this online learning curve we're all on. I'm also thinking about organizations that are, when we work with communities of color and at-risk communities, we're sort of on the verge of social services a lot. Want to make sure we have resources in our programs and can send people in directions to get help. The pandemic has even made that more. I mean, I'm thinking a lot about what you're doing at Pangea, Nina, and all of us. I know one of our cultural centers here, Plaza de la Raza, which is in East LA, been talking to some of them, and even though they're shut down and not getting any rental income or ticket sale income, they're having to provide Wi-Fi for the neighborhood children. A lot of them are undocumented children or children who don't have Wi-Fi at home. So they're coming to the parking lot to get Wi-Fi so they can go to school. I'm just seeing so many of our institutions and cultural organizations having to provide these services in addition to the work. And just shout out to everyone who's keeping those physical spaces going and our organizations going. So yes, how do we use this in our work, and how do we keep working? It's hard. And
I love what Joe Bedard said. I feel like as we complete this program, but what he said was like, how do we be our whole selves? It's not just like we can't compare.
Yes.
I feel like if anything that COVID has showed us, we can't compartmentalize. We have to be everything. Like, right? I mean, our work, our life, our art, everything has to reflect each other. And our communities have known that for a very, very long time. This is what we do,
I think that's a beautiful note to end on. How do we be our whole selves and do the work and keep working? And I feel so honored to be with you all to think through that question and to share what we've been surviving and trying to thrive in. So thank you all so much for sharing and connecting about all these important issues from the last year. And then we hope that we as CAATA folks have managed to show the urgency and the depth of the work that we continue to do despite and in response to multiple global pandemics and extreme political instability and insurrections and all of these things. So we're going to close out the episode for today. If you would like to learn more, you can check out our website at our CAATA website. But first, we would like to thank our funders. We have so many funders. We are so grateful to all of them. And then we would also like to thank Ariel and Max, who were our producers on this show. Please donate to CAATA, and in order to support future activities and projects like this one, as well as to continue supporting the Confest, which will be happening, as we just announced, in May 2022. And please consider becoming a member of CAATA to take advantage of the community that we offer, as well as some resources we can provide. I just love being part of CAATA, so I can't do it enough. Finally, please tune in for our next 2 episodes on February 8th. Again, it's the second Monday of every month. On February 8th, we'll be Return to Our Stories Festival Artist Showcase, hosted by Joan Osato. And on March 8th, we'll be directing an ensemble creation, Asian American Directors in Conversation in Practice, hosted by Mina and Andrea Asaf. So thank you all for joining us. Stay safe, stay well, and from all of us at CAATA, we thank you so much.
For the mic and music now and talk to you. 10 jigger, 9 jigger. For the mic and music now and talk to you. Whoa, oh, oh, oh. All my people say, oh, oh, oh. All my people say,
I represent the 4 stars in my blood. I put my fist in the air with my index finger up. Yeah, we all one people when I represent them all. From water to Madrid, they all show me love. Stay connected to the islands like Tetris when we dropping. Riding from micro, shocker how we styling when that FGM drop. Turn up the volume cause we got that cut. Fresher than your woman's perfume. Goonie in the booth, baby. Sipping goose daily. All for one purpose, y'all know what I'm representing. I'm a bit far from home, but no matter what the distance, toast a cup with my bros, cause we all on one mission. It's the MICRO, Nesian. Haters, lay down, slow, we don't need them now. Raise up like you're trying to reach the ceiling. Unity is what we searching for. You with it, homie, alone.
10 jigger, 9 jigger. For the mic and music now and talk to you. 10 jigger, 9 jigger. For the mic and music now and talk to you. Whoa, oh, oh, oh. All my people say, oh, oh, oh. All my people say, reppin' Marshall Island, what I'm here for. But still got love from my micros. And now they want it, they know who to look for. FGM to put it on the right flow. You know I'm about it, you know I'm real. Showing love. Micro, that's real. It's the MICRO Legion. MICRO Legion. Haters, watch out, fall, believe it. I know you feel it, you know we in the building. You know I stay reppin', yes I stay reppin'. One time for my RMI people reppin'. 10 jiggin', 9 jiggin', for the mic and Fusion Islands all the truth. 10 jiggin', 9 jiggin', for the mic and Fusion Islands